haven't been friends with this guy since at least 2014, late 2013. And the fact that I have to sit up here because we have irresponsible people who call themselves EVPs and couldn't fucking manage a target, and they spread lies and bullshit and put into a media that I got somebody fired when I have fuck all to do with him. Want nothing to do with him. Do not care where he works, where he doesn't work, where he eats, where he sleeps. And the fact that I have to get up here and do this in 2022 is fucking embarrassing.
Hi, thank you for joining us tonight, and welcome to AEW Wednesday Night Dynamite on TBS. Following All Out on pay-per-view this past Sunday night, I've been forced to vacate the AEW World Championship, as well as the AEW World Trios Championship.
Welcome into another edition of Good Karma Wrestling. This is GKW. We have a few things to cover this week. A couple things happened since we last reconvened a week ago. I'm Gabe Knudsen from ESPN Milwaukee. With me, as always, Brian Rowitz from ESPN West Palm. And catch him on ESPN 1000 in Chicago. And I'm not going to read that. He is Jonathan Hood. Jay Hood. Yeah, you can read that yourself. One of the insults that was lobbed by CM Punk during his press conference following All Out on Sunday. And that's where we have to start. It's the biggest thing going on currently in wrestling. Everybody's trying to get more details about what exactly went down after CM Punk's press conference. You just saw and heard. That was more the beginning of the press conference where CM Punk went after the EVPs. Namely, you assume he's talking about the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, and going after Hangman Page as well, later calling him an empty-headed dumb, as, you can, again, read what Jonathan Hood's name down there says. So Punk goes crazy during his press conference, leads to a brawl backstage. The details aren't still exactly clear what happened, I think, because you have both sides kind of leaking out information, trying to make, you can clearly see the sources that are out there that, okay, these are guys who are trying to go out there and stand up for the Young Bucks and Kenny. Okay, these sources are the ones that are kind of trying to stand up for CM Punk and Ace Steel. The one thing that does seem consistent is that Ace Steel bit somebody. So it's just absolutely chaos. Rumors of CM Punk potentially being fired yesterday. Still haven't heard anything about that. And oh, by the way, he has a torn triceps. He's going to be out for 8 months anyway. So the whole thing's just a mess. It's an absolute mess right now surrounding CM Punk.
Well, Gabe, as I mentioned to you last week, and Browitz, I told you that, being a Chicagoan, I'm a fan of CM Punk as far as what he's done in the ring. Watched him in the Indies, watched him in ROH, watched him in WWE, and now in AEW. So I've been a fan of his for a while, but CM Punk may be honest, but he was completely unprofessional. First of all, calling out the EVPs, and we named them because it's the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega, because Cody Rhodes does not work there anymore. So that's the EVPs of the company. And then from there, the out of context remarks about Colt Cabana and his mother, I think that was just out of line. And then about Hangman Page. Listen, here's how I look at it. That doesn't help himself. It doesn't help the company. Just imagine, Browitz, if this is WWE. After Clash of the Castle, Roman Reigns, who's got the world by the tail, sits his championship down and starts going after people on the roster. Going after, Dean Ambrose. Talking about guys like, you know what I'm saying? It would be out of context. It would be out of character, because whatever you want to say about the WWE, that doesn't happen. And so whether or not CM Punk was frustrated because he realized, man, I got torn triceps, man. I just won the championship. I'm going to have to drop this championship again. And so I'm just going to go out and go after everybody. Whatever the reason, it was completely unprofessional. That person and that personality cannot be the face of your company. I think that's very clear.
Yeah, and the weird part is that, a lot of it seems to be sort of self-inflicted. We talked a couple weeks ago about that Hangman promo where he mentions Hangman and calls him out and, sort of went into business for himself. We didn't know anything about that promo. It was just a promo in the ring. No one ever thought oh, man, I can't believe Hangman said that about Punk. But that stuck with him enough. Sunday, no one asked him about Colt Cabana, and then he went down that tirade. He went into that stuff. And, like, it's just so weird to see stuff like that where it's not like someone's pushing him. You're like, okay, it's time to speak up. And it just makes no sense why you would go and do this. And it's disrespectful also because to rip the EVP and say, oh, they can't manage, a target. AEW is because of those EVPs. And if there's no AEW, there is no CM Punk return. And I don't get how he doesn't put those two things together, saying like, oh, these guys are the reason I'm back in pro wrestling. A few months ago, CM Punk loved pro wrestling. That's because of those guys. So I don't get how he gets off saying some of the things he did.
Yeah, because the problem that I have, I guess, juggling, right? So for argument's sake, let's just say he's right. Like they've mismanaged some things. They let some things leak about CM Punk because who knows why, right? Let's say he's right. Well, there's a right way and a wrong way to handle it. And this is 100% the wrong way. You just can't do it. Like you said, Jay Hood, this is unprofessional. Like, and it's just so crazy to me how like quickly he can flip the switch because he opens the press conference just full of piss and vinegar, going after Colt Cabana, going after the EVPs, going after, pretty much saying, hey, bleep you if you were a member of the media who reported this out there because this isn't true. So he goes and then he's like engaging and he's giving decent answers later. And then on the way out, he's got to take one last shot at Colt Cabana. Like, it's just, it's amazing how he can like operate in all these spaces all at the same time, but he wants to talk about being unprofessional. Like this was the ultimate way of being unprofessional. It makes me wonder, like, I mean, first of all, like we love it, right? I don't know if we love it because who knows what happens with AEW, right? But I mean, I'm sure AEW didn't mind the temporary bump last night with a really good rating going over 1 million once again. I'm sure the drama surrounding All Out certainly helped the rating last night for Dynamite. But there's got to be some inexperience in handling the media, right? Like you see professional quarterbacks, or Giannis or LeBron in the NBA. These guys have to deal with the media on a regular basis where 4 times a year they do the press conferences after the pay-per-views in AEW. So some inexperience in dealing with that setting can lead to something like we saw with CM Punk.
Well, that unprofessionalism that we saw, not just from CM Punk's language, but Chris Jericho's language, some of the stuff that happened there, and it all stems from the top. You want to find out what's going on with AEW, it starts with the top with Tony Khan. He allows this to happen. He's the ultimate enabler. I'm so disappointed in Tony Khan. Listen, I've taken shots, and we've taken shots at his booking. He's only done it for 3 years. I understand that. Like, there's going to be some growing pains with him as a booker. I cannot turn a blind eye to the success, though. When you draw over 1 million people on Wednesday night in the middle of the week, you're doing well. When you're drawing $1 million gates for some of your pay-per-views and got eyeballs in your product, that's great. But he is such a neophyte, man, out of trying to understand PR. You're trying to appease the Young Bucks. You're trying to appease Kenny Omega. You're trying to appease Chris Jericho. You're trying to appease CM Punk. He sat there in the press conference like a mark, like he always does, and sits there while the press conference is taking place. Any other place, any other sports organization, you're unplugging that press conference and you're saying, okay, that's enough, we're going to leave. He allowed all that to happen the entire time.
Am I looking into it too much? Because so he's not really, I mean, I went back and obviously watched this thing multiple times. Like I'm watching CM Punk. So then I decided to watch, okay, what's Tony Khan doing when he's going off? Like he's kind of looking away, like he's very intently listening. Sometimes you kind of like look away, lose focus on something just so you can just focus on listening. And then he's like tilting his side of his head and going, oh, okay, I can see that. Like he's almost like encouraging Punk with some of the facial expressions that he's making. Like, oh, okay, I guess that's a good point. Okay, that you said something interesting there. Like when you're right, like I'm surprised he didn't try to end that, especially after Punk kept coming back to it because, he kind of walks away from it. Well, and then he comes back and starts talking about Colt Cabana and how he shares a checking account with his mom. And that's why Colt Cabana decided to end the lawsuit. And then, like, how are you? Okay, let's move on. Let's do something else here.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And also to your point, Gabe, about, LeBron, Giannis, they're meeting with the media every week could be something where they put their foot in their mouth. Those guys and girls also have years and years of training. Like the big stars have been meeting with the media since high school. They're doing it through college to get to the pro sports. These wrestlers that are sitting up there in these press conferences, they've never done something like this before. I think last week was the last time we see those press conferences. I understand what Tony's trying to do. Like, oh, we're going to give access. We're going to be nice to the media. But like, I've been in there once and it's a weird dynamic. Like you have children in there that are like 13-year-olds that have a blog or something, and like they'll ask questions. Then you have actual reported, and like it's just such a weird dynamic that seems unnecessary. But yeah, I agree with you, Jay Hood. Like if you're Tony, like that's on you. You have to say like, all right, we've seen enough here. It's time to move on. And he commented when he was asked about it, but then you can't just let Punk go off on his way as well.
Yeah, okay, so these are your EVPs, and what we saw Tony Khan do is like shake his head, almost in agreement with CM Punk.
Right.
It's like, well, wait a minute, hold on a second. These are your executive vice presidents. But what I said at the time on podcasts, on wrestling podcasts in the past, and it is tried and true, don't let the boys run your company. Don't let the boys run your company. And whether it's Dusty Rhodes, whether it's Kevin Nash, if they're the ones with the pencil and they're the one running your company, that's a problem. Now, I know the buck stops with Tony Khan, but just the way that he came across. And then, of course, don't forget, when Tony had his own one-on-one with the press, when he was there by himself, you know what happened? All of a sudden, he's talking about, well, we didn't know that there was going to be 3 shows during Labor Day, Clash of the Castle, the NXT show in Orlando, and us. Well, usually it's just our weekend. And so, I'm not going to let this effing shit happen or whatever he said. He got all angry. He goes, I'm not Jim Crockett. I got a lot more money than Jim Crockett. And that just pissed me off all weekend, because here's Jim Crockett that during his time in Mid-Atlantic, in the NWA, he's just trying to get a foothold on Vince back in the day, right? It was WrestleMania against the first Clash of Champions with Sting and Ric Flair. Like, Jim Crockett wasn't trying to aggressively go after Vince, but he wanted to have his own niche so he can make money. But the idea that Tony Khan talks about a dead promoter in Jim Crockett, and then on top of that, feels like the WWE is coming after him. Well, it's a wrestling war, idiot. Of course they're going to come after you. It's a wrestling war. What do you think is going to happen? You think Triple H would go, they've got their own show. We'll just close up shop. That's not happening. That's not so. So you think the WWE is going to stop putting shows on because Tony has a show for AEW? Dude, you have to take care of your business. When you're always concerned about the WWE, this is why you get press conferences like that. You're going after the WWE. Your main event talent, Jon Moxley or MJF, is talking about the WWE. How about just take care of AEW business? How about that?
Yeah, but to your point, like, can we really blame like the boys running things? Because prior to this, like early on in AEW, you had a few things here and there. Like Joey Janela comes to mind that like he was pissed about how things went, but like not enough to make an impact. Like things were going fine. They were drawing those ratings. They were drawing those pay-per-view buys. Like I said, they were doing enough to attract the CM Punk, and that's why it sort of boils down to him, to where I don't get how like the Bucks and Kenny end up looking at like the bad guys in all of this.
EVP should not be leaking information if that's what's happening.
Sure.
I mean, you should. It should, if that's happening, if they're talking to, and Dave Meltzer denies it. He says no one talked to me. Sean Ross Sapp said no one talked to me. John Pollock, they said no one talked. They talked to somebody because the information was out. But all I'm saying is that the same Nick and Matt Jackson and Kenny Omega are performers. They also are EVPs. They know who's making what. They know who's going to be on the card. They know how to book themselves. All I'm saying is non-wrestlers should be in the front office and not wrestlers that are actively on a card. It'll kill your promotion quick as that. I've seen it happen.
So let's go ahead and answer the question. Is CM Punk worth the drama? Because it seems like he's the only one who's potentially facing loss of job. Now, they vacated the Trios Championship. Clearly, there's a suspension. I don't know if it's a lengthy one. I guess we'll have to wait and see when we see the Elite back on AEW. But it seems like, at least with all the reporting and all the rumors that are currently out there, that CM Punk is the only one, well, I guess Ace Steel. I mean, what a hell of a week for Ace Steel. Ace Steel goes from last Wednesday, like being the most inside, like some people knew who he was, most people didn't, to now potentially being fired. Like that's a hell of a week that's a tough week for Ace Steel, man. Like going from, oh, this is your time to shine, to, maybe your services are no longer required. But is CM Punk worth the drama?
What do you think, bro?
So my answer has changed during the week. Like after this all went down Sunday, my answer would have been yes. Like he's the reason that they got a little bit more of a bump. He's the reason that, all those eyes were on a rampage. To me, the reason I say no here is because of the injuries. He's won the AEW title twice in the last few months and never been able to defend it. Has been hurt the following week. So to me, you get all the drama, but then you have to be able to perform. So we talk about, the sports, the LeBrons of the world. There's going to be drama around him, but he's going to be out there and he's going to drag your team to the finals. CM Punk's going to bring the drama, and I don't think he's dragging them to the playoffs right now because he's going to be hurt all the time. So because of the injury is why I say no there.
You know, Gabe, Browitz and I came up with the same idea before the show. I'm not sure if CM Punk should be around AEW, but I think that he'd be good for the ROH brand. Because let's go back to where he started. Go back to ROH. And I don't know if that's as a performer or as someone that's in the back or as an announcer, but just being part of AEW, it was a great idea because people have been waiting 6-7 years for Punk to come back. He finally came back. But I think that, you know, you got someone that's north of 40 in there, like Brian said, and I think that that's an issue, right? His injuries tell me that, well, you can't put a championship on him because he'll get hurt. If he's one of these special occasion wrestlers that comes in for a one-off, I think that works out. But otherwise, I think he should be working for ROH.
As much as I want to say, yes, he's worth the drama, because I love watching CM Punk, the performer. Like he does a good job of kind of doing some blending stuff aside of the going into business for himself and challenging Hangman Page to come out, right? Like him as a performer certainly is a boost for your company. But at the end of the day, if you have to make the decision between Young Bucks and Kenny Omega and CM Punk, well, I think the answer from a wrestling standpoint is probably CM Punk. Punk's probably going to draw a little bit more audience. These are the guys that started the company. These are the guys you can't be feuding with. These are the guys, yeah, you can get pissed off at them, but you can't open up a microphone and then just absolutely go off on them. You just can't do it. And then when they come to you because they're upset, and who knows if they went there the right way, but understandably they're upset. They were just accused of not being able to manage a target. Like, this just cannot happen. It cannot happen.
Yeah, but here's what's interesting. We talked about on the show a couple of weeks ago that, you know, when we saw CM Punk just take on opponents, random opponents, it was kind of, okay, he can wrestle. But what's the appeal of CM Punk? That microphone. Yep. And as he said in his press conference, there's crazy old Phil, you know, Phil with his crazy thoughts going into business for himself. Is it a shoot? Is it a work? Kind of like you got a weird thing going on with him. Here's what's strange. That's his appeal.
Right.
People are just because of the pipe bomb of WWE. That's what people want to hear. Like, they respect him in the ring, but they want to know what he's going to say. And if he says something, is it real or not? Right. That's the whole thing. It's so funny when you go through wrestling Twitter. All of these clips from his time in the WWE, like, you know, when Triple H goes after him. Yeah, you try to be a martyr. Everything's great as long as you're on top. All that stuff, right? You got MJF saying stuff. I've retweeted it at GKW_wrestling. Some of those old clips of CM Punk. I mean, some of the stuff, Gabe, as far as Punk being hard to work with for some, I think it's true. Because when he opens up his mouth, he's going to be brutally honest, whether you like it or not.
And so that's, I guess, the other part of this is, what if he's right? What if AEW does have a problem with their EVPs? What if those EVPs are holding them back a little bit? Because we've had that conversation before here on GKW about AEW trying to take steps forward. And I mean, clearly this was not the right way to handle it, but CM Punk might have a point, but he might not be, much like in WWE, around to try to help fix any of it. Because my inkling is ultimately he doesn't get fired, but honestly, as strange as it is, the injury may end up saving him because he gets sent away for 8 months. Everybody gets to cool down. Maybe they can make amends. And hell, maybe they can have a Kenny Omega versus CM Punk blow off and do that in a year at All Out. And people are going to go crazy for it, right? Because you blend that line of reality and pro wrestling. My guess is ultimately he doesn't get fired, but ultimately I wouldn't be shocked if he did because, man, you're throwing chairs at people? Like, who throws a chair, honestly?
Well, listen, for the reports, it was Larry, right? It was CM Punk's dog. Is it Lenny? Is it
Larry. Larry's the dog. Lenny is Mina Kimes' dog.
Okay, got it. Okay. So
keep your dog straight.
Yeah, come on. So keep your celebrity dog straight.
Yeah, which is crazy, right? And that's how this whole thing started All Out, right? The dog gets loose in the arena. That's how the whole started. You should have known that this was going to be batshit crazy, right? So here's Larry, right? Larry's been taken care of by Ace Steel's wife, and so here comes CM Punk's in there, and the Young Bucks super kick the door open, super kick party, super kick, and so they kick the door open. And so Ace Steel's like, hey, that's my wife, and there's a dog in there. And he throws a chair at the Young Bucks. And then, like, Nick Jackson gets hit in the face or whatever. And so now here's all these people in this big skirmish. But it all started with the dog, though, you see? Right. The dog needed to be protected. And it was done by Ace Steel's wife.
Well, and supposedly, like, Kenny Omega was trying to protect the dog, too, at some point. Like, the whole thing's a Mad Lib. Like, at this point, like, every time you hear something new, like, oh, Ace Steel bit Kenny Omega as he was trying to protect Larry the dog. What does that sentence even mean?
But to your point, Jay Hood, about, like, Punk on the mic, like, this is still pro wrestling. So, like, if they can figure this out, like, I agree with you, Gabe. All Out next year, the Elite versus Punk and FTR, like, take my money. Like, I'm in on that. Like, there is still money to be made, and it's pro wrestling. So if they can figure it out, I think everything's going to be all right.
An actual good trios match for FTR.
There you go.
Honest to God, I don't know what we do here anymore. I don't know what this is. It's supposed to be a wrestling show, and I don't know what this is anymore. I honest to God, guys, because, like, okay, so I would agree with both of you. And I think that people that's in the wrestling circle would also agree with this as well. Man, if you don't make money with all this nonsense, then what's the point of all of it, right? Like, you got to make money off of this. And this is going to be down the line. This might be early 2023 for this until CM Punk is healthy. But at some point, we got to get Punk and Hangman and FTR. Somehow, some way, you got to make money off of this situation, this real-life situation.
Yeah, and I think ultimately they do, but I'm sure there'll be some more Mad Lib rumors that come out about this thing that we'll talk about next week. But one of the other things we like to do here on GKW, we talk about the other top stories because, believe it or not, there were other things other than the fight that happened after the media scrum at All Out. We like to call it the 3 count. Brian, what do we have at number 1?
Yeah, there were actually 2 premium live event pay-per-views this weekend that were pretty decent. So we'll start Saturday over in the UK, Clash of the Castle. What is one change you would make to each major show from the weekend? We'll start with Clash of the Castle.
With Clash of the Castle, I would say I would have probably made at least one title change because without the title change in only 6 matches, even though it was a stadium show and the crowd was hot, man, like the crowd just singing to Bayley right away, like it was a lot of fun. But I think I would have – I think ultimately I probably would have put Sheamus over and at least given them that instead of having Gunther. Although, kind of getting the old band back together with Gunther and that whole thing, I think got people pretty excited about that as well over in the UK. But I think I would have made at least one title change. I think that's something that I would have done.
Do we have 3 premium live events or 2.5 with NXT?
2.5. Like, I don't even know if they call it the NXT one, which I watched. It wasn't terrible. I'll put that out there. Not terrible.
Look, I think the fight in the AEW locker room ended up bumping Brian's book report on NXT Worlds Collide. So, like, maybe next week we'll get to it, Brian. I can't say for sure.
No, we never will. No, we will not. It'll be addressed here, and then we'll pretend like it never happened. Like CM Punk being in the company, we'll pretend like it never happened.
All right, sure.
Okay, so I just in case I did my extra homework. I'm putting up the shiny apple here on GKW with the extra work. Tyler Bate should have won the championship over Braun Breaker, and then you turn Braun Breaker heel, going after the squeaky clean Tyler Bate. So, but. I don't even know why they had that event if you're going to give it to all the NXT people.
Yeah,
the UK people had no chance. Like, what's the point of it, right?
Like, that event was literally just to kill NXT UK. It's like, hey, thanks for everything. You guys are dead now. Give us your belt.
I got 2 words for you, NXT UK.
Seriously. And by the way, shout out to Mandy Rose. I have not seen her. Now, I haven't not watched this show in well over a year, so I don't know. Didn't know what to expect. I hadn't seen Mandy Rose wrestle in about, a year and a half? Much improved. First of all, hot, but also much improved. Much improved. I was surprised. I was like, you mean this is not like the diva-like woman I used to see on Raw? She actually could work. Not bad. So the Acclaimed over Swerve in Our Glory was a miss. The Acclaimed, as you saw the crowd in Chicago, they were rooting hard. They changed the chant to "Scissor Me, Daddy." They like remember that? I mean, Billy Gunn was over, brother.
He's so over in
It's
2022. Like, ridiculous.
With not even saying like the two words he's famous for.
Right,
Like
yeah.
it's
Right.
he's daddy ass. Like he is over as daddy ass. That is insane. Like again, this just goes to prove how crazy this thing is that we love. Like we love pro wrestling, and you never know it's ever going to. Yeah, absolutely. I got you down there. But like the fact that he can be daddy ass, and that's like the most over he's been since God knows when. Like it's awesome. It is so crazy.
I mean, the biggest heel reaction last night on Dynamite was Swerve interrupting them to where we didn't get a rap out of the Acclaimed. Like that was the biggest heel moment of Wednesday night.
That's what's called heat in 2022. That
Yeah.
goes for heat, I guess.
Yeah.
Because you didn't get your rep. So the Acclaimed, and I know that probably Arthur Ashe in New York. I'm sure that we'll get a title change there. But I think, and it was suggested in the press conference, by the way, Tony, did you consider doing an audible, which doesn't happen in AEW? I mean, it's happened in WWE before, where Vince would hit the button, change the title, F it, like that kind of thing, right?
Well, that's what happened with
Seth.
Seth, right? Like Seth ran in because they were going to put Roman over, and then all of a sudden they throw Seth in there for the triple threat, and Seth leaves WrestleMania with the title. I don't believe that was the original plan, at least according with all the reporting that that was years ago at this point. But yeah, WWE has certainly done it.
So the Acclaim for me should have won the title. And the other thing with the Clash is, I would have liked, and we talked about this the week before, Lashley or the Usos should have defended the championships.
Yeah.
It didn't happen. The show was fine without it, but I would have preferred to see the Usos or Lashley defend their championship.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, I'm getting a little worried about the WWE tag division when, like, you don't have the Usos there, and then Monday you throw 4 teams in there just to be, fed to Braun. Like, I feel like you could have done the same thing with Braun without wiping out your entire tag division. Like, that felt very Vince-like on Monday.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like, they just didn't have a finish. Supposed to have a number one contender. Again, maybe Braun tags with the kid. Maybe they bring the kid back. He's a little bit older now. Braun's going to tag with him, team with him, and that's how they're going to get the belts off the Usos.
Yeah, but I agree with you guys. The title changes. The one I would do for Saturday, though, with Clash is I think we've seen enough from Liv. Like, it's not working. Like, give Shayna a run. I think Shayna as a monster heel, like the way she was in NXT, like that could be fun, and then ultimately leading up to her and Ronda.
Oh, you're going to get a lot of heat from the Liv fans, from the Liv Hive. And listen, I'm with you. With you. I don't get it. I don't get it. And so maybe that's me. Hey, listen, I'm sometimes slow to be able to warm up to certain people that you put over. Like, if nothing else, Liv Morgan is new, right? It's not the same old, and they're trying. But it just seems like she's wrestling from underneath so much. When you see her in there, I never think that she's going to win.
Yeah, no, and I would be interested in a Shayna versus Ronda match. Like I can see the story; it's a pretty easy story to tell. I don't know who the face is there, but I don't think you necessarily need one. It's just 2 badass women who want to fight over the title. Cool. Used to be MMA fighters. Yup, sign me up. I'm in for that. The one thing I think I would change about AEW, because the show was a little long. They kind of overstuffed the card, right? They had 11 matches on the main card, 14 matches overall. I think I would have just since Christian apparently is hurt and needs legitimate surgery, I guess you need something for Jungle Boy to do, so you turn Luchasaurus back. But I feel bad for Luchasaurus at this point because he's just doing a big show. Oh, he's heel. Nope, actually he's a babyface. Now he's a heel again. I think I would have just kind of cut that and be like, hey, Christian's hurt, can't do the match. Try to figure something else out. That was just kind of a waste of time, and it just did not hit with me. And it's something that I think could have been cut from the show, and you could have saved yourself 20 minutes.
Yeah,
but see, bro, here's where the booking is bad. Man, you knew weeks ago that Christian couldn't be in this match. He's had the brace on for a month.
Right.
Don't tell the story then if he's not available. Don't do a schmoz in the back, like on some random Rampage or Dynamite, and then just erase this whole thing. I'm hyped up for the match. I'm like, finally, like Jungle Boy will be. He says, I'm going to be Jack Perry. You sat down with Jim Ross as if it was going to be something. So you wasted our time. You went
Yeah.
for time. You
Now-
take that match out. Now I got a longer Ricky Starks and Hobbs match in that spot.
Yeah. Yeah. You could have used that 20 minutes elsewhere. Although I guess the one thing I will say that's good that came out of it, I think we got the best Jungle Boy promo we've seen. Granted, it was a pre-recorded, pre-packaged thing that they played last night, but I think it's the best Jungle Boy promo that we've seen when he cut against Christian and then said that he's going to go after Luchasaurus.
It'll be interesting to see where it goes. But the other thing we talked about last week, like we had the question, how many title changes do we see among
You
the two
laughing at the
shows?
ridiculousness of the statement, he's going to go after Luchasaurus? I like saying it out loud. I'm like, it sounds a little weird, but it's what's happening. All right, it's what's happening. It's the Mad Lib of ABD.
No, you know what I was laughing at is nobody crushes a water bottle and throws it like Jungle Boy. He was really angry. He crushed an empty water bottle and threw it away. Now he's really pissed.
But yeah, so the other thing, like we talked last week about how many title changes we were going to see. Like outside of the two matches where there was guaranteed to be the trios and the interim women's, Punk beating Mox is the only title change we saw all weekend. Like between the two shows, everything else was the champions, successfully defending. So a little weird to sort of see that when you put it all together like that.
Because. And the other thing, like usually, and I kind of went back and looked at this, like for All Out, because again, I view it as almost the WrestleMania, right? Like, and I think it's kind of their biggest show. Pointed out that they had the signs in all the arenas leading up, hey, All Out coming up, and to me, like a lot of times WrestleMania, that ends the feuds and you kind of start fresh the new night. That's why Raw after WrestleMania is always such a fun night. They continued a lot of these feuds, like a lot of the feuds just kind of like, Christian Cage and Jungle Boy, just as we mentioned, like, Chris Jericho, obviously they're running back Jericho and Brian. Now, maybe they weren't going to do that, but they're running it back now next week as part of the tournament that they're going to have. I know we're going to talk a little bit about that later. It just seemed like they didn't necessarily like set up new stories, just kind of kept the old stories running.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
What's number 2?
Another non-title change. Roman Reigns again successfully defends his titles. So at this point, guys, when does Roman actually drop the world titles?
SummerSlam 2023 against Cody Rhodes.
SummerSlam.
Okay.
So, I mean, they're still holding out hope for The Rock, right? Like that's what they're kind of hoping for.
A belt on him?
Well, no, I mean, I think ultimately Roman goes over, but they're hoping that Roman is still the champ going into that match against The Rock to try to make it as big as possible. Because I'll tell you what, I hope they give at least one of the belts to Kevin Owens soon. I love everything that Kevin Owens has been doing on Monday Night Raw, coming out, cutting great promos, and then having impromptu matches against whoever he's cutting the promos against. Like, it's been fantastic. And the way that he's been like, hey, if it wasn't for Jay, if it wasn't for Paul Heyman, I'd have ended this thing 6 months in. I think it's a great story that they're telling. Going back to him now and being able to end at least one of those reigns, I think would be fantastic. Ultimately, I think that's not what they do. And they have him, probably SummerSlam. SummerSlam at 24 to Cody Rhodes makes as much sense as anything. But I think they just continue this thing in hopes that The Rock somehow becomes available for Mania in Los Angeles next spring.
I feel like Mania, though, is the special one. Like, having him drop it at Mania is the WrestleMania moment. Because at this point, it doesn't make sense any other place. Like, obviously, if you go away to SummerSlam, that's, 3 years as champion. But if you're not going to put it on Drew in front of all those fans, like, I feel like Mania is really the only place that makes sense at this point.
But, we're looking at Rock, Roman in Los Angeles. What, Rock making the times? He's going to go to Tulsa for that house show? Is he going to Des Moines or Fort Worth for those house shows? I don't think so. I was like, don't give me a part-time champion that loses to a part-time champion. Right? Like when Roman loses the championship. Now I know that sounds ridiculous, and I just gave you the blunt answer of Cody Rhodes. And it does sound ridiculous that Brock Lesnar loses to Roman Reigns, Drew McIntyre loses to Roman Reigns, and Roman's beat everybody. Like the returning Strowman. I beat Braun Strowman.
Yeah.
That won't be anything new. So he can drop it to Rock, but then like Rock's not going to be around. Rock's doing movies. He's got a busy schedule. It sounds ridiculous on the surface that a pro AEW guy comes into the WWE, 240 pounds, and beats Roman Reigns on one of the biggest stages they have at SummerSlam. But in WWE, it would not surprise me because, once again, Vince left the booking cabinet bare, right? If he already had like 10 contenders that Roman hasn't beaten, it'd be awesome. And I know Triple H has to start from scratch, but the only person I see right now is Cody Rhodes winning the championship, which it sounds ridiculous, but I think it very well could happen based on the roster.
Do you think they find a way to split the championships? Are they just going to have him be the undisputed unified champion and both those belts end up going to Cody in 10 months?
I feel like
11
splitting
months?
it like protects you so much. Like you find a way to get one belt off of him, whichever one's been the shortest reign. I have no idea which one that is. But
I
like
think it's
by
the
doing
WWE
that-
Championship.
All right, if you say so. But like that's how you build up other people. Like let them chase that title for a little bit, and you go from there. Like you protect yourself that way.
Sure.
Well, I mean, don't get hot. We don't know. Beg your pardon. See, we don't have. Where's the intern? Don't we have our intern? Where is he to give us? I don't know. We don't know. The only championship that matters to me is the WWE Championship. That's Hogan's title. That's Bruno and Pedro and Brett and Shawn. That's their. I don't care. The Universal Championship doesn't mean anything to me. The WWE Championship, that's the title. That's the only one that
Come
matters
back
to
to
me.
Eagle, and you'll be good to go.
Yeah.
Oh, man, it's,
Well, give me a better,
I just
give me a better answer then. Like if
I can't.
it's not Cody Rhodes,
No, I can't. I can't. Like again, I would love to see Kevin Owens as one of the two again. Like give him the. I don't care. Like make him one of the two, but it's just not going to happen, man. Like I just don't. I don't see. Kevin Owens going into Survivor Series. I'm assuming Survivor Series is the next time we see Roman Reigns wrestle. And by the way, now you can't even do the thing you've done over the last 5 years and go champion versus champion because you unified too many damn belts. Like, so who knows? Like, my guess is you do it at Survivor Series because that's one of the pillar shows. That's one of the ones that you've built up yourself. That's ones you've made important by declaration of yourself. So my guess that's when we see Roman wrestle. But it doesn't make sense for him to drop it at Survivor Series to Kevin Owens as much as I personally would like to see it.
and so now he has even more protection. Does Roman Reigns, not only Heyman and the Usos, but now Solo Sikoa. People were
I enjoyed
pissed at that. People were pissed at that closing of the match. They didn't like that at all. I didn't have a problem with Sikoa. I had a problem with the singing afterwards.
Oh, you had a problem with Tyson Fury trying to send everybody home happy.
I'm like, is someone going to cut the feed?
Yeah,
That's for the house. That's not for us to see.
Well,
I don't want to see this. I don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't want to see freaking Drew McIntyre smiling and singing after all of this, all the media, all the travel to try to be the champion, and he's like, "It's all right. It's all right. Let's sing a song and drink beer."
Well, so it made me think, because they showed the whole damn thing, that Fury was going to like turn on him when they started singing together and punch him and like set up some sort of feud, which obviously did not happen.
I mean, bro, it's of all the indie shows you've seen, where you've seen singing in the ring, was that not the oddest stuff that I'm thinking, okay, Sikoa and Roman are happy. So long, everybody. And the feed keeps going. I'm like, I'm not supposed to be seeing this. What's the smile for? You were
Completely agree.
A great match, and it's like, so you're just gonna blow it off with a little song and a little draft beer, a little, what is going on here?
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, I remember looking, I was like, someone forgot to turn the off button. Like, someone forgot to hit end broadcast. Like, that was my thought watching that. But each their own, I guess. You got Tyson Fury, who I guess is over there. Like, whatever. Like, does he even box anymore? I don't think he does, right? I thought
They kept saying he's the linear champion?
Linear. But I thought he was retiring for some reason.
Yeah, look, man, like, I'll tell you what. Boxing's problem is they have too many damn championships. So you got the linear title, you got this champion, you got that champion. You want to talk about AEW and all the championships they have? Boxing. Good luck keeping track of who the actual champion is, because I couldn't tell you. Like, what's the difference between the linear and is there a non-linear champion? Is there an interim champion over there? I have no idea. I can't. No, okay. What's number 3, Brian? I don't need to keep going off.
There is a non-linear champion. It's Tony Storm. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, good. Well, speaking of the more you know. I'm glad we can educate everyone here on this week's
Tony
GKW.
Sure.
So last night, Tony Khan announces a tournament for the vacant AEW World title will conclude at Grand Slam in a couple of weeks. So guys, who should win the AEW World title?
I mean, come on, it's easy. This is Jon Moxley. And it's Mox. Like, Mox should win this thing. He's the guy who keeps carrying the water. He's the guy, like, as he mentioned in his promo last night, he was supposed to be on vacation. And he came out and cut, to me, a really good promo. It should be Mox. And they already set up Mox feuding with MJF. But I don't know who else in that tournament you give it to. And the one thing that Tony did make a huge deal out of in the middle of CM Punk dumping on Colt Cabana was the fact that this was like the first time that Moxley in well over a year had been, and actually even more of 2-3 years, had been pinned cleanly in a singles match because it wasn't really clean when he went up against and dropped the title to Kenny Omega. So he kind of made a big deal out of, man, beating Mox is a huge deal. So I have a hard time imagining Moxley being entered into this tournament and then not winning it.
So the latest that we've heard from AEW is that they've had a couple of locker room leaders in here, away from Punk, away from the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega. They've had a couple of people. Apparently Jericho has been unbelievable in that locker room. There's still young people that are not going to listen, but those that actually want to learn and those that actually want to get over, they're talking to Jericho. They're talking to Moxley. Moxley, apparently, from what I understand, doesn't say a lot, but when he does say something, it does pack a punch. Danielson also is one of those locker room leaders. So I'm sure they'll give the championship to Mox in their matchup against MJF. I'm sure that that's what we're leading to for Full Gear. But I'm surprised, Gabe Neitzel, that you are not making a fuss at the way the brackets are laid out. I think their brackets are very easy. I think they're very simplistic because I'm surprised you're not saying, hey, how come my guy Ray Phoenix doesn't have an opportunity? How come Brody Lee doesn't have an opportunity? Or Wardlow, God forbid, is that the number one contender because he got the TNT Championship, or Ethan Page or Eddie Kingston? All I'm saying is that there should have been, I think, one wild card in there where it's kind of like, hey, there's an upset victory here. We didn't expect for Ray Phoenix or Ethan Page or someone else to be able to win. It makes it a little bit unpredictable that way, I think.
You could have done it, I think, certainly like that, where you have somebody in there. But I mean, they dubbed it their Tournament of Champions. It seemed the easiest way to go, in terms of having all these guys who have won so many world championships. I mean, Bryan Danielson hasn't won an AEW championship somehow, despite having 6,000 of them currently active. Somehow hasn't won one. I don't know how that hasn't happened yet. But, he's won 6-time world champ or whatever they build him as. All these other guys have won TNT championships, multiple reigns as AEW champ for Jon Moxley. So I get why they decided to do it. But, yes, I think it's pretty easy to predict how this whole thing is going to play out. We're going to have Jericho versus Daniel Bryan as a rematch next week. And, you're going to – although, I mean, look, Darby Allin versus Sammy Guevara should be fun. It should be fun on Friday. Should give you a reason to tune in. And, man, if they decide to give one of those two young guys an upset win over Mox, okay. Like maybe you end up setting, because those are one of the four of the four pillars. Maybe you have one of those two guys end up going up against MJF and start using some of the younger talents. I doubt that's the way it plays out, but yeah, I would have loved to see Ray Phoenix get an opportunity here. Now they just gave him the trio championship along with his brother and Pac. So I would have loved to see more, but short notice, and it was very obvious. I think all three of us could have called it. Like, okay, they're going to crown a new champion at Arthur Ashe. Like, that's the way to do it, because you're going to have more people there, and it should be a bigger moment for whoever ends up winning.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I agree with you, Jacob. Like, I think this bracket, it sucks. Like, I would like to see something fresh. Like, I've been something on Twitter, like, I want Eddie Kingston competing for the world title in the main event of Grand Slam. Like, just that moment, just those near falls. I would even give him a run for a week or two as world champion. Like, I think he is over enough to do that. But looking at this field, like,
he's coming off his own suspension.
Yeah, he learned his lesson. He's good to go now.
He learned his lesson. This is great. He learned his lesson. The problem with Kingston is just like at All Out, he'd win the championship and point at his opponent instead. No, not me. No, him. You won the match. No, him. And like, you notice that in that pre-show? Like,
Yeah.
hey, you're the one who won it. No, that guy's over. He's over. No,
But like
you
that's
won the
the
match.
thing. Like, let's do something fresh. Like, I agree. Mox is the MVP of AEW right now. He's carrying this company. He is like the locker room guy. But like, he's not going to get revenge on Punk, and it's going to be a little weird. I say give it to Bryan. Like, have Bryan and Mox main event Grand Slam, and then it's a little bit different. Bryan's first run as champion, and then you could ultimately lead to him and MJF.
I want someone healthy to be the AEW champion.
Yeah, I mean, he seems okay.
He seems like he's coming off of another concussion. And Mox probably has a concussion. We just don't know it.
But that's
He probably's got a bunch of them. What's your tweet? It's you, bro. What's your constant tweet about Jon Moxley?
about the bleeding.
No, it's about to Renee Paquette.
Oh, they're like, what does she think watching him? As like, what was it? 2 weeks ago, he's licking Punk's blood, like things like that. Like, what is her reaction to that? As a wife at home, as a mother at home.
Mother. This is the
That's
father
what I
of
said.
my child, setting great examples for our child, licking
Bro,
the
it's
blood of
always
another
concerned-
human.
Bro, is always concerned about what Renee Paquette thinks.
I know.
Always
Well, I mean,
concerned.
that's because Renee's a sweetheart, man. You think everybody loves the Acclaimed? No, everybody loves Renee.
Yeah.
I just think that's hilarious. Always tweeting at Renee Paquette. What do you think? Are you?
I just
okay
want to
with
know
all
her
this?
thoughts as she watches her husband lick another man's blood on pay-per-view.
You know what? We just got to put her on the show, and then we'll just find out.
Yeah,
We'll
we could just
find
ask
out.
her, just straight up
Put her
ask
on.
her how she feels
I-
about it.
But I'm with. But you know what, Gabe? I'm in your corner in this regard. I think that Rey Fenix, and boy, he's more and more I see him. I understand why you love him. Guys like him or Brody King. Brody King's now going to have to be the face of House of Black now, and so I think that a guy like him, he deserves an opportunity. They have Tournament of Champions. I think they could have given it a little bit more thought, but I just think that Moxley. And by the way, Moxley, hopefully this tournament won't interfere on his vacation. Who says that in the promo? I was supposed to be out of here, Well, why don't you just keep going and keep walking? How about that? And yeah, give it to somebody that wants to be around. At least Moxley is healthy enough, doesn't have enough concussions. Because if you give it to Danielson, I don't know if he's going to be healthy in the next month. I don't know that.
I guess there's one of two ways to kind of think about this, and I'm curious to see which side you guys fall on. So right now, somehow AEW, despite all this, because of the world of professional wrestling, has some momentum. They've had 3 consecutive weeks of over 1 million people, something they haven't done in like a year, on Dynamite. So they have this momentum. Do you use that momentum and try to carry it over by putting it on someone who's a little more familiar, like Jon Moxley, and have that try to continue the momentum? Or is that the time to try to throw it on someone new to see if people will cling to that?
I mean, Darby would be a twist, like putting it, like you said, on one of their pillars, like letting Darby be that guy. Like, he's not attracting a casual fan, but maybe there's something like, oh, you know what? This guy's pretty cool. Like, he does some stuff where, he throws his body through things. Like, maybe this is the time to do that and sort of start anew.
I'm glad this is 2022, man. If this was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that guy couldn't draw a dime.
No.
Sorry. I know that sounds harsh, but it's just like, he's a great attraction. Heavyweight champion? Nah, I'm good with Moxley. Moxley's promo told me everything I need to know. That guy, even though he had his bags packed for vacation, that guy's passionate. That promo at Dynamite that I heard there in Buffalo was amazing. Because he showed the heart and passion of AEW and wanted to be champion. He takes that championship to Game Changer with them. They know who he is there. He does the Indies and AEW. He just wants to be great. He talked about legacy, I believe, in this promo last night. Awesome. He looks the part. He wrestles the part. Why not?
Yeah, I think it's Mox who ends up walking away the champ at Arthur Ashe Stadium in just 2 weeks' time, which, by the way, we're going to have a special show right after that. So make sure you tune in to these spaces that you usually watch GKW. We're going to have a special pop-up edition of GKW following that show at Arthur Ashe Stadium, AEW Grand Slam.
Yeah,
all right, Brian, we've reached the point.
New York. We're doing this for you, ESPN New York. So make sure that you're with us at 10 o'clock Eastern, 9 after maybe Moxley wins a championship, we'll all celebrate. We'll have our
That's
own
right.
confetti for the new champion. Boy, great timing. A special GKW for our people at ESPN New York. Great.
Should be fantastic. And by the way, we were planning on doing that even before, everything hit the fan in AEW, and now they're actually going to be crowning a new champion, probably new tag champs as well that night, and in Queens, New York. What do we have in the news and notes section this week, Brian?
Right, in the WWE world announced this week, Pat McAfee has been announced as the newest member of College Game Day, which means he'll be off of SmackDown during that time.
It's unfortunate, but the way he described it on his YouTube show, it makes sense. It's just way too much, and WWE very supportive of him going to do that, because the way WWE is looking at it, one of ours is getting that exposure on College Game Day, the biggest college football pregame show that's out there. So if you're a wrestling fan, it's unfortunate, because he is so good on Friday nights, and the chemistry that him and Michael Cole have is fantastic. So it's a bit of a bummer, but at the same time, good for him, man, that he's getting all these opportunities, and he's not walking away. He's going to be back with WWE. You're just going to have to wait until college football season's over.
Well, it disappoints me, because that probably means more Corey Graves. And I'm all for less Corey Graves, quite frankly. Even with it changing the guard with Triple H, do you have to be so hard on Byron? It's not about Byron. It's about the wrestlers in the ring. It's not even entertaining, man. I've heard the insult color analysts over the years, like Jesse Ventura and Bobby Heenan and all these guys in the past. That were heel announcers. Your only heel announcing is against your partner. Okay, so at some point, how many jokes are you going to tell about Byron being single and alone? Yeah, seriously. At some point, how about heel against the babyface wrestlers? It's just I've run my course with Corey Graves doing color.
I am surprised they didn't try to work out something where McAfee goes to Raw and you take one of those guys and put them on SmackDown.
That's a great idea.
So, but I guess because of the radio show, it probably doesn't line up wise. But interesting they're letting them do this.
Actually, I think that's a fantastic idea. Hats off to McAfee, though, because he's not coming in there as an ex-wrestler. When he did commentary, he was there to have fun. Yeah. And people love the fun. He was an instant GIF, I think, for a lot of people watching it with Michael Cole.
Funny. Wrestling is supposed to be fun. And when you treat it like fun, people enjoy it. Wild. Just a crazy idea.
Other AEW news, sort of flown under the radar now. Aleister Black has reportedly been granted his conditional release. He did give a bow and he blew a kiss to the crowd after his trios match on Sunday.
Yeah, I hope everything's okay. It's reportedly because of personal issues that he's kind of dealing with. And there's even a part of that rumor is that he may be just walking away from professional wrestling, which is a shame because he's such a talented professional wrestler. House of Black was a lot of fun. With the trios thing they had going on, I thought they told some pretty fun stories. I hope everything's okay with him. And if it comes to the point where he's ready to come back, I hope I hope he does indeed come back. Maybe he comes back with WWE because he'll be more in the good graces of Triple H than he was Vince. But I hope as a fan, it's not the end of Aleister, that we see him in the pro wrestling ring, and hopefully everything's okay with him personally, which seemingly is why he's stepping away.
One of the cool entrances in AEW is the House of Black. I've seen it in Chicago. I've seen it in Milwaukee when the lights go out and you got those beaming lights going across there. It's very ominous. He's on the ramp, then all of a sudden he's on the ropes. He's on the ropes, then he's already in the ring. He's in the ring, then he's in the third row. I like it. They turn the lights on and off. I always think in person that's a pretty cool scene. And it's just unique, right? So whatever's going on with him, hopefully he'll return. I know that he turned down an indie date, so definitely he's going to be completely out of the picture. So hopefully he'll heal up, return to AEW, and we'll get that one-on-one match. I told you a few weeks ago, I kind of felt like that might be Sting's last singles match because they're doing a one-on-one stare-off for a reason.
Right.
I thought that's what we're going to get, like Sting's last, because Sting's he's not had a singles match in AEW. I thought that would be his last singles match. We'll see.
And also from a wrestling standpoint, disappointing because I think every time those three, House of Black, are on a card, they're going to deliver. They don't get the trios titles because they're essentially handpicked for the Elite, and the Elite are champions for 4 days. So, maybe if, they could have got the belts, you don't know how that would have changed things. But, yeah, hopefully he does end up being okay. And then finally, in news and notes, Wrestling Observer says that, quote, everything is cold on WWE Prize prospect Gable Stevenson currently, who we have not seen since WrestleMania.
Yeah, that's just kind of really weird. They had signed him to the NIL deal, reportedly had even built a ring up in Minnesota so he could train in between the wrestling season, the actual collegiate wrestling season, to try to get him ready for WWE. And man, that he apparently has just fallen off. Maybe he doesn't have interest in it. Who knows? But it was really interesting because he seemed to be, and maybe it was a Vince project and Triple H decided to give up on it. I don't know. But it seemed like to be he was the next guy earmarked, to the point where if he took the championship off of Roman Reigns at SummerSlam in 2023, it would not have been shocking, right? Because that's how highly he was kind of being touted. So it's a little surprising because he seemed to be the hot prospect for them despite not being in their developmental.
Triple H told Ariel Helwani on Helwani's podcast that if it wasn't for Triple H being ill, he wanted to do something with Stevenson. And I don't know if that's a match or just an incident face-to-face. I'm not sure. But he wanted to do something with Gable, and it didn't happen, obviously, because Triple H will no longer wrestle because of the ticker. So, if it doesn't work out, guys, you just move on, right? I mean, you want to take a blue chipper. I know that there's been a lot of WWE personnel that have looked at young wrestlers out of college and say, hey, could you interested in WWE? Let's see how it works out. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So if it doesn't, they'll move on to someone else, I'm sure.
All right, it is time to name our match of the week. And look, despite all the drama that also happened, there was a lot of really good wrestling last week. So I think instead of just giving one, if you have multiple matches, go ahead and lay out what you have as your matches, I guess, of the week.
All right, for me, I'm going to start on Saturday. And actually, this guy tweeted about what great wrestling we had this week. Rollins versus Riddle, and Rollins acknowledging some of the all-out matches. It's pretty cool to see that, hey, other wrestlers are allowed to acknowledge that other companies exist. So I got Rollins versus Riddle. We joked about NXT Worlds Collide, but Carmelo Hayes versus Ricochet for the North American title, that was a lot of fun on Sunday. That was a really good match. Carmelo Hayes seems to sort of have that it factor. I think we see him get called up soon. And then the match ultimately means nothing today, but it was very special on Sunday. The Trios title match on Sunday, the Elite versus Dark Order and Hangman. We all assumed it was going to be the Elite winning those titles. The titles were created for them. But they had me believing that Johnny Hungy was going to get it done. And those near falls were oh, is this really happening? That six-man was a lot of fun.
Johnny Hungy.
But so to that point, Brian, during that match, it made me think maybe they don't. Much like very early in AEW when Private Party defeated the Young Bucks in that initial tag tournament that they had for the first ever AEW tag champions, where you just assumed it was going to be the Young Bucks, ends up not being the Young Bucks as they were eliminated early in that tournament. I thought maybe they would have done something there because, yes, John Silver was having a time and having a lot of fun in that ring.
Johnny Hungy, by the way, takes nothing seriously. He had an opportunity to be in a promo early on Dynamite, and he's smiling the entire time.
Yeah.
Because, take these hands or whatever he said. He had his fist up and smiling. I'm like, dude, I don't believe you. I mean, if your tongue was notarized, I wouldn't believe you. So as far as great matches over the last 7 days, Sheamus and Gunther is one of the tops on my list. Oh my God. That was an unbelievable match. And what I kept thinking is, man, I wish I was in Ireland or somewhere in the UK, because I'm sure those two in front of 200 people, in front of 1,000 people, not alone 60,000 people, would have put on the same match. Physical. And I know that Sheamus gets a lot of crap online. I don't remember a match with Sheamus in which I was disappointed. I know that's Triple H's boy, and it's he's been handpicked by Triple H over the years. But Sheamus took a beating and lost, and got a great ovation from the crowd in the arena. I just thought it was fantastic. I mean, because of how great it was, the chops, the black and blue marks, they went after each other big time.
Well, to that point, I'm one of those people I don't get the Sheamus. I couldn't tell you oh, that's my favorite Sheamus match. None of them come to mind. That match will be up there. That match was a lot of fun watching those two just literally just beat each other up for 20 minutes.
To that extent, it didn't make my three, but an honorable mention would go to Eddie Kingston. A very physical match as well. Eddie Kingston and Ishii on the pre-show. Like, my God, there were 6,000 chops. Like, they both needed. It was so stiff. Like, the entire match, like, it was 100% New Japan, strong style. Like, both those guys just needed to dump their bodies in ice baths right after the match. It was, like, if that's your type of match, like, you absolutely loved it. I was watching it with a buddy of mine who doesn't watch a ton of professional wrestling, and he is like, oh, my God, Gabe, what are you making me watch right now?
No, not me. He's over. He's over. He's over. No, you won the match. No. Him. You won the match. He just can't enjoy his own success. People love that guy, and he can't take it. Danielson and Jericho for me stole All Out. Stole Out. I mean, listen, it all depends on your flavor as far as wrestling shows. I like wrestling, and those two, and this is why we praise Jericho so much. You are actually Lionheart Chris Jericho. That match could have been in WCW on Nitro and ignored. As they did back in the day. I love the revisionist history on that shit too, by the way. The whole thing of like, Malenko and Jericho and like Rey Mysterio, those guys, they were awesome. Yeah, but you were talking about the NWO storylines the entire time. Like, I love it in hindsight. Bischoff's like, those guys really did a great job. Yeah, but you never put them in the main event, did you? They were always at the top of the card. They were always the first and second match in the card. Anyway, so Danielson and Jericho, to me, I think they had a fantastic wrestling match, really submission wrestling, and Jericho gets over. It's Danielson, man. I'm sure he's like, yeah, man, we'll have like 2 or 3 matches, but you get over first. Yeah, you beat me. I'm sure Jericho's like, really? Oh, yeah, you can beat me, man. Beat me up. Make me tap out or whatever, right? So I thought that was great. And I did not have a problem with Roman and McIntyre. I know people did not like the finish, but it was physical. Absolutely, it was physical. And those near falls made me think, Gabe, that McIntyre was going to win. Still a head scratcher to me. It was a head scratcher to me that Roman's came out on top and won that match. But I think once you put it in the ring, Roman and McIntyre, I believe, delivered in their main event.
100%. I had them in my top 3 as well. I had them at number 3. I had Danielson and Jericho at number 2 because it was, I mean, come on, man. Like, Chris Jericho finding, and he had cut in his promo last night about how he's found the fountain of youth. Like, it's legitimately shocking. And I know we've talked about it a number of times, but go look at Chris Jericho from a year ago and look at Chris Jericho now, the weight that he's lost, the moves he's actually able to pull off. He's fantastic the way he looks. And my favorite match, I actually, the Acclaimed versus Swerve in Our Glory, I had that as my number 1 match, man. And even though they got the ending wrong, like, to me, that show was kind of like, the Chicago crowd was like, kind of okay. That match got everyone's attention and got everybody back into it. And look, I understand. I've been there for All Out before, and, they're putting on great matches and you start to wane a little bit. Like, the moment last year was when it looked like the Young Bucks were going to beat the Lucha Brothers in that cage match, and you get Rey Fenix kicking out of a BTE trigger. And
Yes, you're saying, Gabe. Go right ahead, sir. Your analysis.
I lost my train of thought. We'll just no, but so, I mean, it's a long show, so it just like kind of jolts you back into it, and it gets you back into the rest of the show, and that's exactly what that tag match did, because it can be a long night as a wrestling fan there, and everybody was so into that match, and they did a lot of near falls, and it looked like it was going to be the Acclaimed. Ultimately, clearly, everybody's disappointed when Swerve in Our Glory walk away, but it doesn't mean it wasn't a tremendous match, because it was.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, there are so many matches to choose from. Like, we didn't even mention Dynamite. Like, Bryan and Hangman, Yuta and Garcia again. Like the crazy part about all this Punk stuff is he overshadowed good wrestling. Like, there was legit good wrestling for the last 7 days, and all we're talking about is backstage drama because of CM Punk, who wants to care so much about wrestling.
I would have put Rollins and Riddle on that list, but if there was that much heat, if Riddle was that pissed off, wouldn't it be more like a fight and wrestling instead of like a wrestling match? It didn't. The hype and the heat did not match the match in the ring. It was fine. It was not a bad match. I'm just saying, like, Riddle, first of all, you come down to the ramp and you don't do the whole scooter thing. You go down there and you're pissed off. You go down there marching. down there, and then Rollins can do whatever he wants. He wants to look like Elton John. Go right ahead. But you beat his ass though, right? You make it look good, and it felt like a good match, but not great to me.
Yeah, and obviously that feud is going to continue, I think, and that's what you do when Rollins goes over there. That's a feud that certainly is going to continue. Plus, Rollins seemingly needed one of those wins. I'm sure we'll find out more in the course of this next week of all the backstage drama with AEW, but there's also going to be plenty of really good wrestling to watch between WWE, between AEW, and we're going to talk all about it all next week right here on A and GKW.